Updated. Stepdad excluded me from family dinner, so I banned him from our trip, and Mom divorced him. Original post. I, 19F, had been at my wit's end with my mom's new husband, Steve. He had the audacity to ban me from my mom's birthday celebration, saying he had planned it only for the family. For him, family meant he, his stupid daughter Emily, and my mom, leaving behind me and my brother. My brother was out of town, so it was just me who was left out of this family dinner. My mom married this toxic man when I was 14. My father died when my brother and I were kids at 10 and 8. So, growing up, it was just the three of us, my mom, my brother, and me, who would hang out together. We used to have a great time. Yes, money was tight, but we felt loved and secure. Maybe I'm thinking from my point of view. My mom may have been lonely. That's why 6 years later, she fell for this garbage of a man. This is not the first time Steve has been mean to me. There are a series of instances. Even when Mom introduced me and my brother to Steve for the first time, he hugged my brother and said he completed the family. To me, he just smiled. It made me feel unwanted, and since then, it has been a constant struggle to connect with him. My brother seemed to get along fine with him because he moved out soon after the marriage. Steve had always had it out for me. Initially, I ignored it, thinking we would get along eventually. Yet even after years, his toxic behavior continues. We were still adjusting to Steve's presence in the house when he introduced Emily, his daughter. She's older than my brother and me and turned out to be a spoiled brat. She would shower my mom with saccharine sweetness but treat me with utter disdain, speaking to me as if I was beneath her. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself, Steve would swoop in, lecturing me on the need for discipline and accusing me of being rude. It was a double standard that left me seething. Emily could do no wrong, while I was always in the wrong. The injustice of it all was infuriating. So Emily was straight up jealous of me because I was crushing it academically, while she was struggling to find a job and living off of her dad's money. Meanwhile, my brother and I were hustling to take care of ourselves financially. He was tutoring kids, and I was working in a supermarket in my free time. We didn't want to burden our mom with extra expenses since she was already doing so much for us. But this created a super weird dynamic where Steve was low-key, high-key jealous that we were doing something with our lives, while he and Emily were doing squat. He especially hated me for it. Envious little man. Mom didn't neglect us, but her attention was definitely divided. We didn't make a fuss since she was finally happy, but sometimes I felt like an outsider in my own family. Steve never bothered to include me in anything, and it was weird. He'd always claimed my brother as his son, but never introduced me as his daughter. I got it. Emily was his bio kid, but that didn't mean I wasn't part of the fam. It wasn't Emily I had a problem with. It was Steve's shady behavior towards me that was the real issue. I also noticed Steve had some major issues. Dude was a heavy drinker and a stoner. I had no idea what my mom saw in him, and really, he was just a hot mess. When Emily was 21, Mom asked her to find a job, at least a part-time job, so she wouldn't have to rely on Mom for her expenses. This made Steve super pissed, but he eventually agreed. It was just too much for Mom to bear. Steve didn't have a stable job and was just hopping from one to another. Thank God Emily landed a job, so I didn't have to deal with her drama every day. She and her toxic dad would still come up with something to ruin my day. Either it was my weight gain or my acne. Steve and Emily would always make fun of me. Yeah, Emily is beautiful, with a perfect figure, and I'm chubby. So what? It doesn't give them the right to comment on it. It crossed all levels of toxicity. On my mom's 50th birthday, I baked her favorite cake. Emily and Steve also joined in. Steve pulled off the ultimate manipulation move. He and Emily organized a surprise dinner for my mom, of which I had no idea. In the evening, I logged off early from my part-time job to take Mom out for dinner, but before that, Mom called me asking me to join them. I went there to find a tense atmosphere. I asked what happened. No one said anything. Everyone ate in silence. After a while, Mom went to use the bathroom. Steve unleashed his anger upon me, asking, "Why are you here? Don't you understand we wanted to have a family time?" I said, "Mom asked me to come. And by the way, Am I not family? He said, Yeah, whatever. Do you realize how selfish and demanding you are? Can't she have one peaceful evening by herself? I was puzzled by his words. I mean, I wasn't interrupting his couple time. Emily was there too. Then why do I have to face his wrath? I fought back. You and Emily are family to her, but not I, her bio daughter. Emily interrupted. We want to have some quality time with Mom, so could you please leave? I realized why everyone felt so awkward when I arrived. Mom must have fought with him to have me at the table. I was on the verge of tears, but I didn't cry. I swallowed my pride and left, feeling angry and humiliated. I didn't want to ruin my mom's day. Later that night, Mom asked me, Why did you leave midway? I said I wasn't feeling well. I wanted to cry and tell her what happened, but I'm just done complaining about Steve and Emily. Whenever I tell on them, she goes and fights with them, and then after a while he wins her over and things go back to normal. I don't expect her to divorce. Maybe I want that secretly. But she can draw a boundary with them. So this time I just remained silent. However, I feel very envious. I'm hurt. I want to do something to make them pay, or maybe I just want to leave this house for my own good. I'm awaiting my college admission, and then I would be gone from here. I don't know why I'm writing here. I don't think there's anything I can do except suck it up. Now for the updates. Update 1, fast forward a month, and I bagged a full ride opportunity in medical school. I couldn't wait to get out of that toxic household. Our brother was home for a break. He and my mom threw me a small party to celebrate my scholarship. But of course, Emily got all depressed and made it all about herself. The same week, she was removed from her work due to overstaffing, but we all know she was kicked out because of her own incompetencies. Steve was all like, We're not coming to the party, Emily's depressed and I cannot leave her alone. My mom got sad about it. Honestly, I was good with them not showing up. Steve wanted Mom to cancel the party or at least postpone it, but Mom didn't do any of it. She asked Steve to take care of Emily if she was feeling low, but we would have the celebration anyway. So, last minute, Steve changed his mind and said he'd come, but Emily was still out of it. However, at the party, I found both of them showing up. They sulked in the corner, making faces. I didn't let them ruin my vibe, so I enjoyed it with my mom, brother, and aunt. Mom was torn between us. She wanted to include them in our fun, but they maintained their distance. Well, good for them. My aunt and brother were pissed off to see their toxicity. I narrated to them the incident that happened at Mom's birthday, and they were infuriated. My brother came up with a revenge plan to go on a family trip to celebrate my success. Aunt Jenna pitched in to take care of my expenses, but I said I had saved some money from my part-time work and I could bear it for myself. I took the responsibility of planning the trip to Vegas. It was time for Steve to taste his own medicine and see how it feels to be excluded. The next day, I announced that we were taking Mom for a family trip. Steve and Emily were stunned. Steve asked, What do you mean by taking Mom for a trip? Are we not going? I said, No, it's a family trip, so you and Emily are out. Steve looked at Mom for intervention, but Mom ignored him and asked me about it. I told her Aunt Jenna and my brother and I had pitched in for this trip. Emily was fuming in anger, but couldn't say anything. Mom hugged me, asking where I got the money from. I said I saved it from my paycheck. Mom was in tears, saying she was proud of me because I saved from my so little part-time income. And that, too, I was willing to spend it on her to cover her expenses for the vacation. Steve and Emily had to put on a plastered smile in front of Mom. After Mom went to work, Steve came to me and asked why they were excluded from the trip. I rolled my eyes and said, Because it's a family trip, remember? He sighed and said, Are you holding a grudge because of that dinner thing? Then let me tell you, we are over it. We can start a fresh bond. You're moving out to build a new life for yourself. Do you want to go with this hatred? Let's use this vacation to mend the family bond. I said, That's exactly why I'm going on a trip to have quality time with my family. But sadly, it doesn't include you and Emily. He asked me with a straight face what he should do to get included in this trip. I said nothing could give them a spot on the vacation. I noticed desperateness in Steve. He never lets Mom alone with me or my brother. He was worried that we would turn Mom against him. He's right. That's exactly what I'm going to do. The next morning, Aunt Jenna stopped by, and she rubbed the excitement on Steve's face that we were going to Vegas. She tried to dig him, saying, "Isn't that every gambler's ultimate haven?" Steve turned pale and just nodded. Aunt Jenna never liked Steve, and she always said she had a gut feeling that Steve was burning money and gambling, but he never admitted it. So, after Aunt left, Steve and Emily put up this act that I and Aunt were turning Mom against him. Mom tried to tell Steve not to make a big deal out of it, but he was beyond reason. He stormed out, with Emily trying to guilt-trip my mom into canceling the trip, but this time Mom didn't give in, and she said she was going for the trip whether he liked it or not. Finally, Mom has started to see Steve's true colors, and I'm hoping this trip will be the wake-up call she needs. She deserves so much better than a toxic leech like Steve. Mom was waiting anxiously for Steve to come home for dinner, but he knew he'd slink back in eventually. Where else would he go? And sure enough, he stumbled in with Emily, who was practically holding him up. He was wasted and face-planted onto the sofa. Emily had dinner and then retreated to her room, leaving Steve to his drunken snores. The silence was deafening. No more fake smiles or sweet talk. Mom finally saw beyond the facade, and I could sense her realization. The morning of our trip, Steve and Mom had a massive blow-up behind closed doors. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the yelling was intense. Steve stormed out, giving us the stink eye while leaving. I made sure to lock my room. No way I'm trusting Emily with my stuff. On our way to the airport, Mom was anxious and distracted, still reeling from the fight. I told her to forget about Steve and his drinking habits. He's only thinking of himself and his precious Emily. We ignored his angry texts and calls, knowing he'd only ruin the trip for Mom. My priority was making sure my mom had a peaceful trip, and I was glad we could make that happen. The trip was a blast. We stayed at the Bellagio, and it was straight fire. The mountains were lit, the pool was popping, and we even tried some of that infamous Vegas buffet wild ride. By the way, the highlight was taking my mom to the Mob Museum. She was beyond happy to be there. Everything about the trip was just beyond amazing. No Steve, no Emily, just us, and a whole lot of fun. My mom deserved it, and I'm so glad we could make it happen. One evening in Vegas, I had the chance to fill Mom in on all the drama that had gone down. I broke down in tears and told her everything. Her insults, Emily's lectures, the whole shebang. My brother had had it up to here too, and he told Mom we couldn't keep living like this. Mom was upset and said she would talk to Steve, but she was still hesitant to kick him out, saying they were struggling and she couldn't just leave him. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, I'm eagerly waiting for our return, curious to see how Steve and Emily will react when we get back. Update 2. Another drama bomb, guys. Jenna and I made sure Mom had a blast on her trip and, more importantly, opened her eyes to the reality of Steve's manipulation. We convinced her to cut off his access to their joint account since he was blowing her money and who knows what. When we got back, we were greeted by a mountain of beer cans, but the cherry on top was Emily, who was supposed to be working but was actually holed up in a room with her boyfriend. Mom was livid and told them to get the boyfriend out ASAP, no strangers in our home. The peace we found on our trip was shattered, and we were back to dealing with these toxic people. They're exhausting. When Steve saw Mom, he gave her a tight hug. Mom questioned him about the empty cans and the mess he had created. He dismissed her complaints and kissed her, claiming he missed her so much. Yeah, right. Well, I know it's just her money he's missing, and sure enough, after just 15 minutes, he asked her for money. I mean, come on. Mom, being the enabler she's been, gave him some money, I know, right? And he promptly left. The drama never ends with these two. The house was a mess, so I helped Mom clean up, and Emily came out to give a hand with a sad face, but didn't say anything. Then Steve stumbled back in, drunk and belligerent, spewing vile nonsense at me and my mom. He had the audacity to claim my mom was inconsiderate and selfish to Emily and him. He even went so far as to say my mom was indifferent to his precious Emily and that I hated her, which is why I didn't take her on the trip. No, it's because she's not family. The emotional manipulation reached new heights. Emily broke down in tears, claiming she loved Mom more than her own mother. Manipulation alert! But she betrayed her and left her alone. She had the nerve to blame me for not letting them be together. But Mom saw right through it and refused to let them bully me. When they started picking on me, Mom stepped in and told them to back off or she'd throw them out. Yes, Mom. Steve, in a rage, smashed a vase on the floor. Scary! But Mom stood firm, finally free from their gaslighting and guilt trips. She threw him out and told him to leave immediately. I was so proud of Mom for finding her strength and kicking these toxic people out of our lives. She could finally see the pattern. They always played the victim and blamed me. Steve had the nerve to call her from outside, whining about disrespect and claiming he'll never forgive her. Oh, poor him. But Mom stood firm, telling him she wouldn't let them back in unless they both groveled and apologized to me for everything, including the death of my cat. Oh, did I mention anything about my cat, Toby? Poor dude. Dad got him on my 6th birthday, and Emily was all like, "I'm allergic. Get rid of him." I was like, "No way, I'm not giving up my cat." Steve got all salty and said I wanted Emily dead, that I had no conscience. But honestly, I knew Emily wasn't allergic. She just didn't want Toby around. Then one day, someone accidentally leaves the door open and Toby gets attacked by a dog. I know it was either Steve or Emily, but my mom won't believe it and thinks it was just an accident. But Toby never left the house. He was a chill cat, so I know that's not true. Toby got really sick and he died. Mom finally woke up and saw Steve for the toxic manipulator he truly was, and I couldn't have been prouder of her for breaking free from his grasp. She was vulnerable when they met, and he swooped in like a vulture pretending to be nice to both of us. But slowly, his true colors showed: manipulative, controlling, and downright abusive. He played me like a fiddle, but she finally cut the strings. It was a long time coming, but she took back her life and kicked him to the curb. Mom could finally see the financial abuse for what it was. She told me that Steve really got paid, and when he did, it was never enough. But that didn't stop him from spending her money like he was going out of style. I'm still fuming that she ignored these massive red flags for so long. She threatened to cut them off from their joint account, and it's about time. No more enabling, no more financial abuse. And she was thinking of divorcing him. Yes, as she should. She also gave notice to Emily to find a place for herself, as she is an adult now and should be able to take care of herself. Update 3. After Mom kicked Steve to the curb, he and his daughter, with their fragile egos, refused to apologize. But honestly, we weren't surprised. Steve thinks he's some kind of alpha male. He had the nerve to call Mom and spew more venom. But little did he know, he was just pushing her further towards divorce. We were cheering him on to get out of our lives forever. We thought we'd seen the last of Steve's drama, but nope. That night, we got a surprise visit from 2 massive guys who showed up at our door. We thought it was Steve coming to cause more trouble, but oh boy, we were wrong. They told us through the door camera that they wanted Steve to pay up the money he lost in gambling. I'm talking thousands, people. My jaw dropped like never before. Mom told them Steve no longer lived here and that she had divorced him. She gave them a nice, "not my problem," and told them to find Steve elsewhere. I was dying to know what other skeletons Steve had in his closet. Mom's anxiety level went through the roof. She checked her phone and got another shock. Steve had emptied their entire bank account, funding his gambling addiction. We were livid and struggled to get through the night. The next morning, Mom took matters into her own hands. She sold all Steve's stuff and got half the money back. She knew Steve would come crawling back for his stuff, and sure enough, he showed up at night. But Mom was ready. She told him she'd sold all his belongings, and he unleashed a tirade of abuse, calling her a witch. But here's the kicker. When my mom told Steve she was filing for divorce, he showed no remorse, no regret, zero, zilch, nada. He's got some serious nerve. We were all shaking our heads, but my mom stood firm. She was finally taking back her life, and we're cheering her on. Mom told us that Steve's friend Richard ran an illegal gambling store in the basement of his house. Aunt Jenna knew someone in the police, and she tipped him off regarding the illegal setup. The authorities raided the hideout, but that's not all. They also found strippers on the premises. Mom was devastated. Her heart was broken into a million pieces. She couldn't believe Steve's involvement in such shady activities and the fact that he'd even attended strip clubs. Justice served. After the illegal gambling operation was shut down, Steve squandered on his addiction. She filed for divorce, and Mom threw Emily out of the house after a month, despite her pleas for more time. Now, as I prepare to leave for college, I can finally breathe a sigh of relief knowing Mom is safe and supported. Jenna is there to help her heal, and Steve and Emily are out of our lives for good. The drama has finally ended, and we can start our new chapter in peace. Story 2. Wife had an affair with my ex-best friend of nearly years, who also married my sister. Some backstory might be needed here. My 38-maid wife, 40F, and I started dating 17 years ago. We broke up and got back together a handful of times. During this time, one of my best friends died. I took that guy's brother under my wing, and over time I looked out for him, mentored him, pointed him in the right direction personally and professionally wherever I could. He became a brother to me. Now pan back about 3 years into dating my now wife, she flew to Alaska to visit my best friend from high school. I know now it was because she was interested in him. Shortly after she got back, she broke up with me, and I found out she was spending time with him. So now my one best friend is dead, and the other one is moving home to steal my woman. I was honestly ready to jump off a bridge at that point. I don't recall how it played out, but we ended up back with each other. At this point, I should also say that my wife is one of the sweetest and kindest people. She is also an alcoholic. Once she has 2, she is having 20. She regularly would drink to the point where she couldn't walk or talk. She saved that for me most of the time, but once in a while would get blasted around others. This became a point of contention for me. Everyone loves my wife. They think she's the greatest person on earth, and I'm lucky to have her. Well, after our first kid was born, the drinking started bothering me. I got tired of cleaning up vomit and urine around the house. I got tired of her not giving a fuck about me, and I was just tired. After our kid was 3 months, it became clear she had severe postpartum. I begged her to get help, and she wouldn't. When our kid was about a year, nothing had changed. I had been laid off, and she pushed me to accept a job where I would travel 80% of the time. I had no desire to take it, but I did, because she was freaked out I wouldn't get something else. So after several months, I start traveling to the UK for work. I was there for about a year, there 2 or 3 weeks home for a couple weeks. We started fighting a lot. Then one day I was walking to the train. It was about 3 a.m. at home, 9 a.m. in London. She is blasted and tells me to move out when I get back. I basically said fine, told her not to call me unless it was about the kid, then hung up. Literally the next day I am having a drink in a nice lounge and a woman sits next to me. I was reading about planes and she starts telling me about how she grew up next to an RAF base and is a huge aviation nerd. So we talk for a few hours and eventually exchange numbers. We go on a few dates over the next couple weeks, and at the end of that trip we had sex. Mind you, at this point I hadn't heard from my wife in almost 3 weeks. I assume I'm going home to papers and it's over, and I was totally good with it as our history was completely fucked up as it is. The only thing I felt truly bad about was that I had met this amazing woman, and honestly the first date was more of a fuck you to my wife for destroying one of my longest friendships and then telling me she wanted me out when I was 4,000 miles away from home. I honestly fell in love with that woman in London. I get home around 3 in the afternoon and my wife is sleeping. I try to wake her and tell her we need to talk. She doesn't want to talk, she just wants to sleep. So I go down to the couch and I have a nap myself because I'm jet-lagged. I wake up getting slapped in the face. She had woken up and gone through my phone, found the messages between me and the woman in London. I basically was like, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. You told me we are done and that I'm moving out. That's the plan. So I move out, We never divorced for financial reasons, but the relationship was cooked. Fast forward to COVID, me and my London GF talked about getting married, this, that, and the other. Then bam, COVID. We were gutted. We hung on for about a year before we split amicably. At this point, my ex starts inviting me over to have dinner with her and my kid. It was really nice. This keeps going on until eventually we start sleeping together. She tells me she wants me to come back, and I came back. Things are fine for a couple years and we have another kid. I beg her to talk to her doctor about postpartum so we don't repeat the past. She agrees. Kid is born, everything is great. No around when our daughter is born, my sister and best friend move out of state. I notice my wife and friend texting quite a bit. They were friends for a long time too and had similar interests. I trusted the dude so much I didn't think too much of it. Over time I started getting uncomfortable with it. It was starting to feel like it did when she went and fucked around with my other friend. So we go visit. I take my buddy out for a guy's night, spend $300 on drinks. We head back to the place to hot tub. My wife is up and she's blasted. So the three of us hot tub. I got out to pee in the yard no more than 5 feet away. I turn around to find them rubbing their feet in each other's crotches. Now I think I'm seeing things. I'm drunk. I honestly was in shock. They both tell me to go to bed. So I said, yeah, I'm done. I go upstairs. 45 minutes later, I assume they are fucking. I get up and then magically they start coming upstairs. She gets in the room and starts making out with me passionately. This isn't normal for her. Or sex life had been shit for a few years. Well, in all this, she says to me, "Take me up to your room and fuck me." I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It makes zero fucking sense to me. I had an inkling, but she played it off to being drunk. The next day I wake her up and tell her what I saw and what she said. I told her her relationship with my best friend, my sister's husband, her friend's husband, is beyond inappropriate. She says she doesn't remember anything, and I just am like, yeah, stop fucking talking to him. The next day we leave. She tries to tell me she asked if anything happened, and he said no, nothing happened, and everything is fine. Lies on lies on lies. A couple months later, my sister's family comes to visit. They stay somewhere else, but they came over one night for drinks and to hang out. They leave. My wife is drunk again. She starts having sex with me and says, "I don't think my name would approve of this." Again, I'm like, what the F? I stop everything dead in its tracks. She made up some bullshit about being drunk and whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, okay. So a month after we go to a charity event together, she's drunk, and I notice her texting my sister's husband, basically all day. At this point, I've had it. I take her home and she passes out. I go through her phone and surprise, surprise, they talk a lot and there are tons of gaps where I can tell texts were deleted. So I confront her the next day. She admits to having an emotional affair and that they kissed when we went to visit them. He kissed her. That night in the hot tub, they got out and he kissed her, making her telling me to take her to my room and fuck her make all the more sense. Yeah, and maybe some groping. I lost my mind, but days later we are live bombing each other, having amazing sex 2-3 times a day. This lasted a few weeks and now I'm lying in bed needing to be up in 4 hours and I can't fucking sleep. My family has been obliterated. I can't stand the thought of not being with my kids because the year I spent being a part-time dad the last time we split was awful. It would destroy my son if we split. I can't bring myself to do it. I keep telling myself it's more important for me to stay with my kids than leave my wife. But at this point, I feel absolutely nothing for her. We are both getting individual therapy as well as couples counseling. I know our marriage is all but dead, but I know I'm going to stay in it because I don't want to strip my children of the life they have. Neither of us can afford our house alone. I'm honestly debating us just staying here and together, but being like, okay, we are going to see other people, and it just is what it is. I have no idea what to do. I don't want to leave my kids, but I also want to be happy and have a romantic relationship. I told her that an open marriage is the only way I will stay. It's not even about having a sexual relationship with someone else. It's about just having a support system. The 2 people who were my confidants betrayed me. I feel very alone. I don't know what to do. I just get up each day, put on my big boy pants, and be the best dad I can be, but I feel so fucking alone.